is it that keeps you from doing what you want to do? It keeps you from doing what you know you ought to do. Maybe it's trying out for that team, applying for that scholarship, that position, putting in for a promotion or a raise, volunteering for a ministry, asking out or proposing to that guy or girl. What is it that keeps us from doing what we know we should do, like getting baptized or joining the church, becoming a Christian, or talking to someone else about becoming a Christian? What keeps us from going? Jesus told us, we've seen over the past 2 weeks, to go. Why don't we want to go? What is it that keeps the church from fulfilling the Great Commission? Could it be that there are giants in the land that paralyze us from doing what is right? Point of history for our text today, Numbers chapter 13. You know that the people of Israel have spent 40 years in the wilderness. They don't want to go in. And there are spies who tell them not to go. They're at the porch of the promised land. And so in Numbers chapter 13, they send in spies. And these spies, in verse 25, return from spying out the land after 40 days. Spies started out as an act of faith. They wanted to see, reconnoiter, how they could conquer the promised land. But it ended up being a venture of doubt. They thought that their job was to figure out not how they were going to win the land, but whether or not they could win the land. They wanted to see if God was able to give them what he promised. So in verse 27, they brought back word to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Remember, they carried back great big clusters of grapes that took 2 men to carry. Wow, talk about flowing with milk and honey. After being out in the wilderness, they told them, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. But, you know how that word changes things. I love you, but, you don't want to know what's coming next. Instead of saying but, they say, nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. This is our subjective opinion. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. There's great cities, high walls, and there's huge giants. Remember, they're coming from Egypt, where they've never seen walled cities before. So what did they see? All they saw was difficulties. When you see God through the perspective of your problems look very big, and God looks very distant and very small. It's like looking at God through the wrong end of the telescope. Ever look at the wrong end of binoculars? Things look very far away. And when you look at God through the backwards binoculars of your problems, God looks distant and small. But when we look at our problems through the binoculars of God, our problems look small and distant, and God looks very large. They saw only the problems. They forgot Egypt, and they said, there's no way. But in verse 30, Caleb, bless his heart, Caleb quieted the people before Moses, and he said, let us now go up and at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Caleb saw the problems through the lens of God. Now who's right? 10 spies say no way. 2 spies say, let's go right away. Who's right, the majority or the minority? The minority oftentimes ends up being right. The majority is often wrong. That's something for us to learn. In verse 31, but the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people. If you think you're not able, you are not able to go up. They are stronger than we are. It's time for the bad news brigade to show up. The Debbie Downers step in, and they depress and they frighten everyone. For they gave, verse 32, the children of Israel, a bad report of the land which they had spied out. it, they say. They're huge. That's the very essence of a bad report. They go from the land of milk and honey to look at the next verse, verse 32. They said, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants. Yeah, and how come it hasn't devoured the inhabitants that are there? And all the people whom we saw were men of great stature. We saw giants. How come you're not screaming and crying? Didn't you hear when we said giants? Isn't it time to panic? And to make things worse, this land that God has promised to us, told us that we could capture, we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. God has promised them the land, and these cowards don't believe God. And worse, they discourage others. Friends, we are in a similar situation. God has commanded us to go, and He has promised that He would be with us, and that He would help us win the world. But we say, oh, Lord, we've seen the world recently. It's called the Great Commission. In Matthew, Jesus says, go therefore and make disciples of all nations. Oh, Lord, there's so many of them. They're so big. He promised in Psalm 2:8, ask of me, and I will give you the nations for your inheritance, and the ends of the earth for your possession. All you got to do is ask. This is actually God promising His Son. I'll give you the nations. The church has just got to go and get them. Is it possible that we have wimped out in the same way these 10 cowardly spies have? Because, frankly, we don't want to go. God has promised. But we see giants in the land like they did. Lord, the networks are so big. They're so anti-God. The educational system is rigged against us. Big business is all about money, nothing about God. There's organized crime. There's big government. There's false religions. Beside that, every human being that lives around us has a terrible sin nature. And there are giants in the land. God knew that before He sent them in. But what they saw and what we see does it paralyze us from doing what is right, what we know we ought to do? What are the giants in the land for us? Maybe some of the giants that they face. Giant number one that they face, and I think we also face today, is unbelieving pessimism. They said, we are not able. Friends, positive thinking doesn't always work. I think I can. Some things you can't do, even if you think you can. But if you think you can't, negative thinking always works. Because if you think you can't, you can't. Numbers chapter 11. Moses said, I am not able to bear all these people alone, because the burden is too heavy for me. How do you know until you try? Israel says, we're not able to build the wall in Nehemiah 4:10. How do you know? Maybe you are. How about the child who says, I can't tie my shoes. I can't tell time. If you say you can't do it, you can't. There are two kinds of ball players out in the field. There's one guy out in the field who, with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth, says, don't hit it to me. Please don't hit it to me. What is he thinking? If they hit it to me, I'm going to make an error. And guess what happens when the ball comes to them? They make an error. There's also the player out there, hopefully most of the players out there saying, please hit it to me. I want the glory. I want to make the last out. Which one are we? There's a salesman who walks into the sales presentation and says, you wouldn't want to buy this from me, would you? As a matter of fact, I don't care what it is. No, I wouldn't. But there's another salesperson who walks in and says, you need to have this. You want to buy this, don't you? Well, both of them are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you think you can't, you won't. And if you won't, then indeed you can't. This is not the gospel of self-help. Actually, it has nothing to do with lifting yourself by your own bootstraps. You can't leap tall buildings with a single bound, no matter how much you think you can. But God knows better than you do what you can do. And He told the Israelites, you can take this land with my help. So the Lord says, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, Philippians 4:13. 1 Corinthians 10:13 says, God will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. God knows what you can do, and he never asks you to do what you can't do. Never forget when my son was 3 years old and was trying to carry this heavy load of stuff up the stairs. I said, "That's a big load for a little boy." And he said, "Mom knows what I can carry. Mom gave it to me. Mom thinks I can carry it up. Good for you. Mom knows what you can carry." God knows even better what you can carry. You ought to take the word "can't" out of your vocabulary. As a matter of fact, when you go home today, here's some homework. Take out your dictionary, and I want you to cut out "can't" and "quit." Now, the dictionary, it's easy. They both start with K. And don't use those words this week. Can't or quit or ever again. If you say we can't win the world, we won't. And indeed we can't. If you say our church can't grow, indeed it won't. Because it can't. If we say I can't win, I can't pass, I can't succeed, you won't. That's giant number one. Giant number two is unsettling discouragement. They were given a bad report by the spies. I put on the screen one of my least favorite quotes, but I use it quite often. There is nothing easier to find, the way I say it is, there's nothing easier to find on God's green earth than someone to tell you all the things that you can't do. 10 spies are quick to tell the people of Israel the stuff that they can't do. You tell somebody what you want to do, what school you want to apply to, what person you want to ask out, and be ready to hear Debbie Downer tell you, "Oh, no, you can't do that." You make a decision to better your life, to lose weight, to further your education, to give yourself to God, and somebody, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a friend who says, "Oh, I tried that, it never works." Throw cold water on your dreams. Someone to tell you all the stuff you can't do. Your job is not to listen to Johnny Raincloud and to go out there and try anyway. Because if you think you can't, you won't. Don't let the critics discourage you. I want to give you one of my favorite presidential quotes. This comes from Theodore Roosevelt, who said, "It is not the critic who counts. It is not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotion, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end triumph by achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. Do not be the quitter who gets off the field because someone says you can't do it, who takes pot shots at you, cheap shots from the sideline. Hey, they're on the sideline. You get on the field and if you strike out, at least you took a swing. The Bible is full of examples of Johnny Rainclouds, Debbie Downers, who told people they couldn't do it. For instance, Sanballat in Nehemiah chapter 4, he mocked the Jews and said, "What are these feeble Jews doing? Will they fortify themselves? Will they complete it in a day?" No, not in a day, but they will complete it if they don't quit. Will they revive the stones from the heaps of rubbish? As a matter of fact, they did, because Nehemiah was encouraging them while Sanballat was discouraging them. Even Jesus had his naysayers. Remember, his mother, his brother said, "Come on, you're going to get yourself killed." Or on the cross, they shouted, "He saved others. Himself he cannot save." That's what he could. He didn't listen to those who said that he could. Jesus says, don't listen to them. And he didn't. Jeremiah 23:16. Do not listen to the words of the prophets who prophesy to you. They make you worthless. They speak a vision from their own heart. Don't listen to the prophets who tell you all the stuff you can't do. The question is, whose report are you going to listen to? Isaiah 53:1 says, who has believed our report? Isaiah was saying, you can do it, but they weren't listening to him. So whose report are you going to listen to? Those armchair quarterbacks who've never been in the game? The ones who tell you all the things you can't do? Or God, who knows what you can and can't do, and only tells you to do what you can do? When you are given a bad report, unsettling discouragement, when you are told, you can't win the world, you can't even win one person, you will face what the church now faces, inevitable decline. If you are told, if we believe our church can't grow, we will not grow. If we believe we can't win, we can't pass the ball, we can't catch the ball, indeed we can't. So don't listen to the Debbie Downers. Giant number 3, face the people of Israel, face us. Unrealistic fears. You remember the spies said, the land devours its inhabitants. This is not only their wrong subjective opinion, this is a wrong objective fact. The land could not possibly swallow its inhabitants, or there wouldn't be any giants in the land. Come on. Famine? No famine in the land. Look at the size of the grapes. Cannibalism? The ground opened up? No way. It's not doing it. And obviously, these naysayers are contradicting themselves in their wild imaginations. They say, we can't do it. They make up excuses, even though the excuses don't make any sense. If you don't want to do something, any excuse will do, right? So they made up one. You know what one of our big excuses is? I'm not going to do that because somebody might, they might laugh at me. Oh, heaven forbid someone might laugh at you. Dude, does laughter hurt? Yeah, if you got made fun of in grammar school, you know laughter can hurt us. We say sticks and stones may make my bones, but names will never hurt. No, they hurt. But laughter never killed anybody, right? It's our pride that we're worried about. Are we afraid? Look at Proverbs 22:13. The slothful says, there's a lion outside, I shall be slain in the street. No lions out there, but if you think there are, you stay inside, you never go anywhere or do anything. Proverbs 28:1 says, the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are bold as a lion. There may not be a lion in the streets, but if you think you can, then you can be a lion and you can go out on the streets. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7 tells us God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and a, what's the last 2 words? Sound mind. There are some things to be afraid of, right? You ought to lock your door. You ought to lock your car. You ought to be careful downtown in the middle of the night. But some things are unrealistic fears that keep us from doing what we should do. God has not given us a spirit of fear that, because we imagine there to be lions in the streets, paralyzes us. Unrealistic fears keep us from fulfilling the Great Commission, from going. They keep us from growing as a church. They keep us from even trying. Giant number 4 is untrue exaggerations. The spy said, all of the people are of great stature. Friends, that's just a lie, right? All is always a lie, and never is never true. I just contradicted myself in both statements, but we use these exaggerations all the time. Sometimes we sleep and we don't use them, but these exaggerations are everywhere. Everybody's doing it. No, everybody's not doing it. I told you 1,000,000 times not to exaggerate. Come on. Look at the exaggerations in John chapter 11, verse 48. The opponents of Jesus said, if we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him. How many followers did Jesus have? 12? A couple hundred? John 12:19, you see you are accomplishing nothing. Look, the world has gone after him. When Jesus died and went to heaven, he left behind 120 followers. Now, there are over 1 million followers of Jesus Christ today. Like most can see, the church has grown. But they exaggerate. They say the equivalent of everybody's doing it, or our opposite is nobody cares. That's not true. If you're going to make a life-changing decision, wouldn't it be wise at least to base it on truth rather than lies, which, let's face it, exaggerations are. That's why Paul tells us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, whatever things are true, whatever things are honest, whatever things are noble, just, pure, lovely, whatever things are good report, not bad report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Do not allow an exaggeration, a lie, from keeping you from doing right. What you want to do, what you know you ought to do. From trying out, from applying, from putting in for the promotion, the raise, for asking someone out, for proposing, for for joining, for being baptized, talking about Christ, for going on a mission trip. Giant number 5 is unbalanced focus. The spy said, "There we saw giants." When you look out at the giants in the land, do you see obstacles or do you see opportunities? You know, what you look at determines your attitude. What you look at determines what you think. And what you think determines what you do. And what you do determines what you are. You get to choose who you are because you get to choose what you focus on, what you look at. Computers give us what you see is what you get. But you are not a computer. What do you see? Lessons or bummers? Obstacles or opportunities? Giant grapes or giants? All they saw was giants. They weren't looking at the milk and honey. They weren't looking at the opportunities. Remember just a few short weeks earlier, Exodus chapter 14, when Pharaoh drew near, remember they were at the Red Sea and Pharaoh's armies were coming? The children lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see," not Pharaoh coming, but see the salvation of the Lord. They were literally between a rock and a hard place, right? Between the devil and the deep blue sea. If they look at Pharaoh's armies, they'll all just die of heart attack. But if they look at the pillar of fire, the pillar of smoke, they will see God's deliverance. Moses said, "You are what you look at." Do you see God's deliverance? In 2 Kings chapter 7, there's the great story of Elisha, who lives on this little hill, and he's surrounded by the armies of the king who've come to arrest him, kill him. And Elisha knows that God is protecting him, and he's not frightened. The servant says, "Elisha, Elisha, what are we going to do?" And Elisha says in 2 Kings 7:17, "Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." He doesn't pray for his eyes to be open. He doesn't need to see the angels surrounding him. He says, "Open his eyes that he may see." The Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. I don't know how many angels are protecting me, but I know God is protecting me, and he's got at least one assigned to me. And I don't need to see them to know that God's got something planned for me, and God is in control of what happens to me. So what do you see? You see giants, or like David, you see 5 smooth stones. The Great Commission is God sending us on a mission that we can fulfill, but only if we think we can. Do we see an opportunity? There's an ancient story of a shoe salesman who was sent off to native Africa. And he went, and when he got there, so discouraged, he sent back a telegram to the company and said, "Bring me home. Nobody here wears shoes." They brought him home. And they sent another salesman who had a can-do attitude, and he saw opportunity. And before he sold his first pair of shoes, "Send more help, send more shoes here. Nobody wears shoes." Are there no people out there that need Jesus? Have you looked out there recently? There are thousands of people in the shadow of our steeple that need Jesus. There's opportunity all around us. The mustard seed could get discouraged and say, "What am I going to do? I'm surrounded by soil." Grow. The candle could say, "What am I going to do? I'm surrounded by darkness. What am I going to do?" Well, I'll tell you what you do. Shine. Giant number 6, unhealthy insecurity. They said, the spies said, "We are like grasshoppers in our own sight." If you are a grasshopper in your own sight, you might as well be the size of a grasshopper because you're not going to do anything human. Moses thought he was the size of a grasshopper. He said in Exodus 3:11, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" Who are you? You're Moses. God specially prepared Moses. He raised him with the best education in Pharaoh's house. You're the best qualified man in the world. Gideon said, chapter 6, verse 15 of Judges, "How can I save Israel? I am the least in my father's house." Yeah, but if you've got God on your side, that's a majority, isn't it? God says to both of them, I will be with you. Exodus 3:12, Judges 6:16, I will be with you. Yeah, God said that to Moses, and God said that to Gideon, but he never said that to me. Yes, he did. Matthew chapter 28, verse 20, right after the Great Commission, Jesus said, Lo, I am with you always. You can't cross the street to tell your neighbor about Jesus, or cross borders to go halfway around the world to tell someone about Jesus, then Jesus doesn't go with you. Christianity needs to learn that we are not grasshoppers, that we are Christ's body, that we have the Holy Spirit living within us, that all of God is in Christ, that all of Christ is in us, and we are the ambassadors. We are the light of the world. Our church needs to learn who we are. We need to learn that healthy churches grow, and growing churches are healthy. You need to get over this unhealthy insecurity. It's not humility. It's false humility. And then there is a seventh giant, perhaps the worst of all, unfounded assumptions. The spies not only say we were grasshoppers in our sight, they say we were grasshoppers in their sight. How do they know that? Did they do interviews? Did they take surveys, go door to door? Hey, we're from Israel. A couple spies here. We want to know what you think of us. They didn't do any of that. These are pretty poor spies. They lie not only about what they are, they lie about what the others say about them. Paul says it doesn't matter what they think. 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3. With me it is a very small thing that I should be judged by you or by a human court. In fact, I do not even judge myself. Verse 4, he who judges me is the Lord. What if somebody calls you a name? What if somebody calls you stupid? What if somebody calls you some kind of racial slur? Does that say anything about you? No, it says something about them. What if you think you're stupid? Does that make you stupid? No, you are who you are. It doesn't matter what they think or what you think, but it especially doesn't matter what they think. It's what God thinks. It doesn't change who you are. As a matter of fact, what they really thought about Israel, they were dead wrong. They were lying. In Joshua chapter 2, we find out what they really thought about them. This is what the Canaanites were thinking about Israel. The terror of you has fallen on us, and all the inhabitants of the land are faint-hearted because of you. Our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more courage in anyone because of you. The naysayers, the cowardly spies, were saying, well, grasshoppers in their sight. No, they weren't. They thought that the Israelites were the giants. Your naysayers probably might be mistaken. They probably are. Rahab tells them the spies were wrong. The spies are almost always wrong. The majority is often wrong. There are giants in the land. Yeah, giants in your mind only. They said we're not able, but they were wrong. They gave them a bad report. The only thing bad about it was they listened to it. They lied about the land. Their fears were founded on a lie. They said all the people are giants. No, they had some youngsters there. That was a lie. They saw giants. Yeah, there were some giants, but they were focused on the wrong thing. We were nothing in our sight. They were wrong. We were nothing in their sight. They were wrong. That's a lie. Do you want to base your life on a lie? Live in denial? Why don't we want to go? Usually some pretty bad reasons. But don't let these lies keep you from doing what is right. Don't let fear paralyze you. It's not the most profound insight in history, but it is certainly true. 100% of the shots you don't take don't go in. Have you ever noticed? If you don't shoot the ball, you never miss, but you never make it. What is your free throw percentage? If you don't take a shot, it's 0%. What is your batting average? If you never take a swing, it is 0%. I'll tell you what is 100%. 100% of the people who you don't tell about Jesus will not respond. 100% of the spiritual disciplines you don't practice will not produce any life in you. 100% of the doors you don't knock on will not open. 100% of the schools you don't apply to will not accept you. 100% of the potential mates you don't ask will not go out with you. 100% of the teams you don't try out for will not take you. My life verse, Jeff 3:16, is the tragedy of life is not what happens to you, but what you miss. It's not swinging and striking out. It's never going up to the plate or swinging at all. It's those imaginary fears, those bad reports, those assumptions that keep us from doing the right thing. It seems to me the Bible tells us a story about a little boy and a giant named Goliath. And David didn't say, "Oh no, giants," and turn and run. He didn't say that giant's too big to hit. He said, "It's a giant. It's too big to miss." He saw a giant opportunity. And God puts before us today a giant opportunity. In John 4:35, Jesus says, "Behold, I say to you, lift up your eyes and look at the fields." Don't look at the giants. Look at the fields, for they are white harvest. God, don't bring me home. Send more shoes. Send more people, because there are millions of people who need Jesus. Let us be the church, like Joshua and Caleb, who says, we are well able to do it. Let you be the one who tells the church the good report. Let us be Joshua and Caleb, who say, let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Read those words with me. Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. That's pretty good. We can do better. Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. Is God calling us to hold on till He comes, to guard these four walls, to keep the lights on? Or has He called us to leave this building and go out there where people need Jesus and make a difference? Let's love the challenge. There's a world to win. There's a city to reach. There is a test to pass. Let's pray. Lord God, thank you for loving us enough to save us and trusting us enough to give us a huge job. I can't believe you trust us with the job of spreading the gospel, because we do such a poor job. When you send angels, they do it without fail, but we fail many times for pretty sorry reasons. But Lord, forgive us for our unwillingness to go and our spirit of fear. And Lord, give us the courage to say, let's go now, for we are well able to do it. Let us be convinced that if you ask us to do it, then we can. Let us believe that we can, and let us take a swing. Let us get in the game, and let us go. Lord, you've called us to a great commission. Go into all the world, preach all of the gospel to all the nations. We're thankful that you will be with us always. Lord, if there's one here who's never trusted in Christ as Savior, I pray that today they would not be too fearful to make a decision to do the right thing when they put off for too long and receive you as Lord and Savior. Say in their heart to you something like this, and Lord, I know I'm a sinner, and I can't save myself, but I believe you died on the cross for me. Come into my heart, forgive my sins, make me the person you want me to be. Your head's still bad if you prayed that prayer this morning. And it's the very first time we met. I'd like to pray with you, pray for you. If you've already prayed that prayer, you know you're a Christian, but you've been living in a spirit of fear. What is God calling you to do? Where is God calling you to go that you've allowed the naysayers to keep you from doing? Remember, there's nothing easier to find on God's green earth than someone to tell you all the things you can't do. But don't listen to them. Don't look at the giants in the land. Lift up your eyes and look at the fields. God says, who will go for us? Let us say, Lord, here am I, send me. Lord, send me, send us. Help us to be faithful, to fulfill the great commission that you've given to us as a church. We ask this in the name of Christ our Savior. Amen. When we stand down front, while we sing, and trust Him, let's stand together and sing a couple of verses of this great invitation. I pray, and I pray with you, pray with all yourself. Not coming to